Chapter 1. The Forgotten Orphanage. The road to Blackwell Orphanage was desolate, stretching through miles of fog-shrouded countryside. Amelia Carter tightened her grip on the steering wheel as she followed the nearly invisible path on her GPS. The deeper she drove, the fewer signs of civilization remained. No streetlights, no houses, only the dense, suffocating mist that swallowed everything in sight. She had read all the stories, watched every documentary, and studied the orphanage's history. Blackwell had once been a grand institution, a place meant to shelter war orphans and abandoned children in the late 1800s. But tragedy clung to its walls like ivy. There were rumors of harsh punishments, children vanishing without a trace, and of course, the infamous fire that had closed its doors for good. No official record explained what had happened that night, only that the building was found eerily empty. No bodies, no survivors, just silence. As she rounded the last bend, the orphanage came into view. A massive decaying structure stood against the gray sky, its silhouette jagged and unnatural. Ivy had claimed most of the brickwork, weaving through shattered windows and creeping into the gaping doorway like nature itself was trying to pull the place into the earth. The iron gate at the entrance was twisted and ajar, swaying slightly, though there was no wind. Amelia parked her car and stepped out, shivering as the cold air wrapped around her. She pulled her jacket tighter, grabbed her recording equipment, and approached the entrance. Every footstep echoed against the cracked stone path. She hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware of how silent everything was. No birds, no insects, just the sound of her own breathing. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. The hinges groaned in protest, the sound reverberating through the vast, empty halls. Dust motes floated in the stale air, illuminated by the faint light filtering through broken, stained glass windows. The grand entrance was lined with portraits, each depicting solemn-faced children in Victorian clothing. Their painted eyes followed her as she moved, their expressions unreadable, trapped in time. She turned on her recorder. "This is Amelia Carter, paranormal investigator. I've just entered Blackwell Orphanage. The building is in complete disrepair, but there are clear signs of past inhabitants. Graffiti, abandoned belongings, even melted candle wax. According to reports, visitors have experienced voices, objects moving on their own, and the sound of children laughing at night. I'm here to document any activity." As she ventured further inside, the wooden floor groaned beneath her boots. Peeling wallpaper revealed rotting wood, and an old chandelier hung dangerously from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by decades of dust. She ran her fingers along a wooden railing, feeling the deep grooves where tiny hands had once gripped it. Then, something shifted. A whisper, faint but distinct. Amelia froze. The air around her grew impossibly cold. The sensation of unseen eyes crawling over her skin sent a shiver down her spine. Slowly, she turned her head toward the grand staircase. A soft giggle echoed from the second floor, high-pitched, playful. Her pulse quickened. There was no one here, at least no one living. She took a cautious step forward, her flashlight flickering as if something unseen had passed through it. The laughter came again, this time slightly closer. She wasn't alone. Chapter 2. The Voices in the Dark. The second floor loomed above Amelia, shrouded in shadow. The grand staircase creaked beneath her careful steps as she ascended, her flashlight sweeping across the dust-covered walls. The laughter had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against her ears like a heavy fog. At the top of the stairs, a long hallway stretched into the darkness, lined with doors, each marked with peeling numbers. Room 201, Room 202, Room 203. The air was thick with decay and something else. Something she couldn't quite place. A faint trace of lavender, sickly sweet, like old perfume lingering in an empty room. She lifted her recorder. I'm on the second floor now. The structure is surprisingly intact, though signs of past visitors are everywhere. The walls are covered in graffiti, but underneath I can see faint traces of the original wallpaper. Children's drawings, faded with age. The air here feels different, heavy. As she moved forward, the floor groaned beneath her weight. The temperature continued to drop, and Amelia could see her breath in the dim light. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, the hairs on her arms standing on end. Then, a soft whisper. She spun around, her flashlight trembling in her grip. The sound had come from room 206. The door was slightly ajar, revealing only darkness beyond. She hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside, the room was almost untouched by time. Tiny beds lined the walls, their blankets faded and covered in dust. A wooden rocking horse stood motionless in the center of the room, its paint peeling away to reveal splintered wood beneath. Along the far wall, a bookshelf leaned against the plaster, stuffed with old children's books, some missing covers, others lying open as if abandoned mid-story. And then she heard it again, a whisper, faint, barely audible. Why did you leave us? Her blood turned to ice. She scanned the room, heart hammering in her chest. The voice had been so close, as if someone had spoken directly into her ear. She turned back to the hallway, but something had changed. The doors that had been slightly ajar were now wide open, gaping like silent mouths. A low creak filled the air, and she realized the rocking horse was moving, slowly, rhythmically, as if something unseen was riding it. She took a step back, her pulse pounding. If someone is here, I mean no harm. I just want to understand what happened. The rocking horse stopped abruptly. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then the whisper returned, closer this time, curling around her like icy fingers. We never left. A sudden burst of static crackled from her recorder. She yanked off her headphones, eyes darting around the room. The atmosphere had shifted. She could feel it pressing in, surrounding her. Something was here, and it was watching her. Chapter 3, The Room That Breathes. Amelia's breath came in shallow gasps as she stepped back into the hallway, her pulse hammering against her ribs. The whisper still echoed in her mind. We never left. The air felt charged, almost electric, as if the orphanage itself had woken from a long slumber. She needed to keep moving. The hallway stretched on, dimly lit by the occasional slant of moonlight, filtering through cracked windows. The doors lining the corridor were all open now, revealing glimpses of rooms frozen in time. Tiny beds covered in moth-eaten blankets, broken toys scattered across wooden floors, the faint scent of something rotting beneath the layers of dust. Then she saw it. At the very end of the corridor, a door stood shut. Unlike the others, this one bore no number, no markings. The wood was a darker shade, almost black, as if stained by something long ago. As she drew closer, a strange sensation prickled at her skin. The air felt denser, as if the space beyond the door was breathing. She raised a shaky hand and placed her palm against the wood. It was warm. A deep, slow thud pulsed beneath her fingertips, steady and rhythmic, like the beating of a heart. The sensation sent a shiver up her spine. She hesitated, gripping the doorknob. It was ice cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the wood. With a deep breath, she turned it. The latch clicked open with unsettling ease, and the door creaked as it swung inward. The room beyond was untouched. Unlike the rest of the orphanage, this space was pristine. The beds were neatly made, each with identical white sheets. Stuffed animals sat on the pillows, their black button eyes staring forward. A single wooden chair stood in the corner, its seat covered in a thin layer of dust. She stepped inside. Immediately, the door slammed shut behind her. Amelia jumped, her flashlight flickering wildly. She spun around, grasping for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The air in the room grew thick, pressing against her chest. Then the whispers began. Dozens of them, layered on top of one another. Some high-pitched, like children's voices. Others deeper, raspier, like something long dead. She locked us in. She said we were special. We couldn't leave. The beds began to creak. The sheets wrinkled and shifted as if unseen bodies were rising beneath them. The rocking horse in the corner started to sway, its movement slow and deliberate. Amelia backed away, her heart pounding. Her flashlight flickered again, and for a brief moment, in the dim, unsteady glow, she saw them, tiny figures standing beside the beds. Children. Their faces were gaunt, hollow-eyed. Their skin stretched too tightly over their bones, gray and withered, as if drained of life. Their mouths opened, but no sound came out. Only the whispering continued, filling the air, surrounding her, pressing into her skull. Then they moved. One by one, they turned toward her. Amelia's breath hitched. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. The figures took slow, deliberate steps forward, their bare feet silent against the wooden planks. She fumbled for her recorder, her fingers trembling as she raised it to her lips. I don't know what's happening. There are. The whispering stopped. A suffocating silence followed. Then, a single voice, so close it felt as if it were inside her own head. She's coming. The room suddenly plunged into darkness, and Amelia realized she wasn't alone. One by one, they turned toward her. Amelia's breath hitched. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. The figures took slow, deliberate steps forward, their bare feet silent against the wooden planks. She fumbled for her recorder, her fingers trembling as she raised it to her lips. I don't know what's happening. There are. The whispering stopped. A suffocating silence followed. Then, a single voice, so close it felt as if it were inside her own head. She's coming. The room suddenly plunged into darkness, and Amelia realized she wasn't alone. Chapter 4. She's coming. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Amelia's breath hitched as she frantically shook her flashlight, but the dim beam only flickered weakly, like a dying firefly. The air had turned frigid, thick with an unnatural presence that pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She wasn't alone. A thick, suffocating silence filled the room. Then, movement. A slow, deliberate scrape against the wooden floor. Amelia's pulse hammered against her ribs. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay still. to listen. Another scrape. Closer. She turned on her recorder, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't see anything. The air feels heavy. Something is here with me. The children, a breath, right next to her ear. She's here. Amelia whirled around, her flashlight sputtering back to life for a brief second, just long enough to catch a glimpse of something in the farthest corner of the room. A shape. Tall. Wrong. The shadows bent around it unnaturally, as if the darkness itself clung to its form. Then a sound. Low, guttural, like something wet being dragged across the floor. Her instincts screamed, "Run!" She lunged for the door, yanking at the handle. It didn't move. Her fingers fumbled, desperately, slipping against the cold brass. Behind her, the whispers started again. "You shouldn't have come. She doesn't like visitors. She will take you, too." A slow creak filled the room. Amelia dared to turn her head. The rocking horse was moving again, but this time, it wasn't empty. A small girl sat atop it, her long black hair cascading down over her face, obscuring every feature. Her tiny hands clutched the wooden horse's neck, fingers unnaturally stiff. She wore a faded white nightgown, its fabric stained and torn. Amelia's stomach twisted. The girl lifted her head slightly. A single, milky white eye peered at her through the strands of hair. Then she smiled. The air shifted, charged with something unseen. The whispers escalated into frantic hissing. The girl's grin widened too far, stretching unnaturally as her lips cracked, revealing jagged, uneven teeth. The door behind Amelia burst open. She stumbled backward, heart racing, nearly falling into the hallway. The moment she crossed the threshold, everything stopped. The whispers, the cold, the pressing weight in the air. She gasped, sucking in breath after breath, turning back toward the room. It was empty. The beds were untouched. The rocking horse was still. The girl was gone. But the door, the blackened door, the one that had been shut when she arrived, was now wide open. Inside, the darkness pulsed, deep and waiting. A single voice slithered out of it, curling around her like a whisper of smoke. "Don't go. Stay with us." A sudden gust of cold air blasted through the hallway. The temperature plummeted again, and from the corner of her eye, Amelia saw something move. A shadow. Impossibly tall, its arms stretching out like ink, bleeding into the walls. The door to the room slammed shut. Amelia didn't wait. She turned and ran. Chapter 5. The footsteps that follow. Amelia ran. Her boots pounded against the rotting wooden floor as she sprinted down the hallway, her breath ragged and desperate. The air around her felt thick, charged with something unseen, pressing against her like invisible hands, trying to pull her back. But she didn't stop. She reached the grand staircase and took the steps two at a time, gripping the banister for balance. The air felt warmer here, less suffocating, but the sensation of being chased hadn't faded. Every nerve in her body screamed danger. Then, footsteps, not hers. They came from the second floor, heavy and slow, deliberate. Thud, thud, thud. Amelia skidded to a stop at the bottom of the stairs, her flashlight trembling in her grip. She turned, aiming its weak glow upward. The hallway she had just escaped from was empty. But the footsteps continued. She couldn't see it, but it was there. A breath of icy air ghosted over her skin. The shadows at the top of the staircase shifted, stretched, moved. Then something stepped forward. Not a child, something bigger. Amelia's stomach twisted into knots. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body refused to move. The figure was barely visible in the dim light. Tall, unnatural, its limbs too long, its posture hunched as if its bones had been twisted into something that was never meant to walk this earth. And then she saw its face. No eyes, no mouth. Just a hollow, gaping void where a human face should have been. It tilted its head as if listening. Then, in a voice not its own, it whispered, Amelia, and you came back." The voice was familiar, too familiar. It was her own. Something in her snapped. She turned and bolted down the corridor, the flashlight's beam bouncing wildly as she ran. The orphanage groaned around her, its walls seeming to breathe, the floorboards shuddering beneath her steps. Then the footsteps behind her quickened, no longer slow, no longer deliberate. They were running. She barely reached the end of the hallway before she felt it, something grabbing at her jacket, yanking it hard enough to nearly throw her off balance. She screamed, ripping free and diving into the first open doorway she could find. She slammed the door behind her and locked it. Then, silence. Amelia pressed her back against the cold wooden door, chest heaving. Her flashlight flickered, casting weak shadows across the room. It was a storage area, crates, rusted metal shelves, broken furniture piled in the corners. But something felt wrong. The air was heavy again, and then, beneath the sound of her own ragged breathing, she heard it, a whisper, right next to her ear. "You shouldn't have locked the door." A hand, cold and bony, grabbed her wrist. She screamed. The flashlight slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor, and in its weak, spinning glow, she saw them, the children, huddled in the corners of the room, their sunken eyes locked onto her, their mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Their skin was gray and torn, as if they had been trapped in this place for centuries. One child stepped forward, a girl with hollow black eyes and a deep gaping slit across her throat. "She's almost here." The door behind Amelia shook violently. Something on the other side was trying to get in. The girl lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward the far side of the storage room. Amelia followed her gaze. There, in the corner, a small door, almost hidden behind broken furniture. A way out. The door behind her slammed again, harder this time. The wood cracked. She didn't think. She ran. Throwing herself at the small door, she wrenched it open and squeezed through just as the storage room door shattered behind her. She fell forward into darkness. And then, everything was silent. Chapter 6. The Tunnel Beneath the Orphanage. Amelia landed hard on the cold, damp ground, her flashlight slipping from her grasp and rolling a few feet away. The impact sent a sharp jolt of pain through her knees, but she barely noticed. The silence around her was overwhelming, as if she had plunged into a different world entirely. She gasped for breath, her lungs burning, her pulse a frantic drumbeat in her ears. The air here was thick, stale, wrong, like the scent of something long dead, forgotten beneath the earth. Panic gripped her as she turned onto her hands and knees, scrambling toward her flashlight. The beam flickered wildly, illuminating the space around her in erratic bursts. A tunnel, narrow, crumbling, stretching into darkness. The walls were made of old bricks, damp with moisture, covered in patches of thick black mold. Roots hung from the ceiling like skeletal fingers, and somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the passage. Amelia's breath came in short, shallow gasps. Where the hell was she? Her mind raced. The orphanage was old, centuries old. Had this tunnel always been here? Had it been forgotten, buried beneath layers of dust and history? And more importantly, was she alone? A deep, guttural creak sounded from above, the shattered storage room door. Her stomach twisted. She had to move. Snatching up her flashlight, she forced herself to stand, ignoring the sharp ache in her legs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she hesitated, turning the beam of light toward the entrance she had just fallen through. The opening was too high to climb back up. And then, a sound, soft, slow, scraping against the floor above. Something was moving in the storage room. Amelia swallowed hard, gripping the flashlight so tightly her knuckles turned white. The darkness above seemed to shift, stretching, bending. A low, unnatural breath filled the space. And then, in that same distorted, broken version of her own voice, the thing whispered, "Amelia, why are you running?" She bolted. Her boots slammed against the uneven ground as she tore down the tunnel, her flashlight's beam bouncing wildly against the damp brick walls. The passage twisted and turned, the air growing colder, denser. Somewhere behind her, a slow thud echoed. Then another, and another. It was following her. Amelia forced herself forward, lungs burning, legs aching. The tunnel narrowed, forcing her to duck as she ran. The walls felt like they were closing in, pressing against her, suffocating. Then, a door. It stood at the end of the tunnel, old and rotting, with deep scratches gouged into the wood. It looked beaten, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way through from the other side. A shudder ran down her spine. She didn't care. She had to get out. She lunged forward, gripping the rusted handle, twisting, locked. No, no, no. She pounded on the wood, frantic, her breaths ragged. The footsteps behind her quickened. Closer, closer. The air turned freezing. Amelia's breath hitched. She turned, slowly, flashlight trembling in her grip. The tunnel behind her was dark. Too dark. Her beam couldn't reach the end. The blackness seemed alive, shifting, writhing. Then, a figure stepped out from the void. Tall, distorted, wrong. The faceless thing tilted its head, the darkness coiling around it like living tendrils. Its arms stretched unnaturally, its limbs too long, its body moving in jerks like a puppet with broken strings. It raised one twisted hand and pointed at her. Amelia's vision blurred with terror. Bang! The door behind her slammed open on its own. She didn't hesitate. She threw herself through it, tumbling into the unknown. And as the door slammed shut behind her, the last thing she heard was a whisper. "You can't leave her behind." Darkness swallowed everything. Chapter 7. The Room of Forgotten Whispers. Amelia hit the ground hard. The impact rattled through her bones, sending sharp pain through her knees and elbows. She gasped, rolling onto her back, her flashlight slipping from her grasp and flickering wildly as it spun across the floor. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the door behind her slammed shut. The noise reverberated through the room, deep and final, like a coffin being sealed. Amelia's breath came in short, ragged gasps. Her entire body trembled as she pushed herself up, forcing her shaking hands to reach for the flashlight. The beam stuttered, weakly illuminating her surroundings. It was a room. Unlike the tunnel, this place wasn't narrow or damp. The air here was dry, still, thick with the scent of old wood and dust. The walls were lined with bookshelves, their contents warped and rotting, eaten away by time and neglect. Cobwebs stretched between them, swaying slightly in an unseen breeze. A desk stood in the center, covered in a layer of dust so thick it looked like ash. Scattered across its surface were papers, their edges brittle and curling, as if they had been untouched for decades. Amelia swallowed, her throat dry. What was this place? Her eyes flickered to the ceiling. No lights, no windows, no way out. The only door was the one she had just fallen through. And it was gone. Her stomach twisted. No, that wasn't possible. She scrambled to her feet, spinning toward where the door should have been. But only solid wall remained, aged, cracked wood, seamless as if no door had ever existed. Her pulse pounded. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. A whisper, soft, almost inaudible. Amelia froze. It came from behind her. Slowly she turned. The bookshelves stretched into the darkness, their contents rotting, crumbling. But something moved between them. A shadow, shifting, sliding, pressing against the edges of her vision. Then, a voice. "Do you remember us?" The whisper was everywhere, seeping into her bones, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. Her grip tightened on the flashlight. Then, in the dim, flickering glow, she saw them. The figures. Dozens of them, standing between the bookshelves, half hidden in the darkness. Children. Or what used to be children. Their faces were wrong. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, their skin a sickly, lifeless gray. Some had gaping wounds, deep slashes across their throats, jagged holes where their eyes should have been. Others looked as though they had been burned, their flesh cracked and peeling, revealing raw, darkened tissue beneath. And yet, they did not move. They only stared. "You left us." The whisper shivered through the room. Amelia stumbled backward, her flashlight shaking. Her breath hitched in her throat, her mind screaming at her to run. But where? She remembers now. The voice was different this time. Closer, right next to her ear. A cold hand gripped her wrist. She screamed, jerking away. The flashlight's beam swung wildly, casting erratic shadows across the walls. The figures shifted, their heads tilting unnaturally, their bodies beginning to move. A creaking sound filled the air. She turned, her chest heaving. The desk, it was moving. The old wood trembled, the papers fluttering as if touched by unseen hands. Then slowly, something began to rise from behind it. A figure, tall, twisted, faceless. Its body was shrouded in darkness, its limbs too long, its form shifting like something unfinished. It crawled over the desk, its head tilting toward her, the gaping void where its face should have been stretching wider. And then, it spoke. "She's coming." The wall shook. The whispering grew louder, faster, overlapping voices crashing into each other, filling her mind like a deafening storm. Amelia ran. She didn't know where. There was nowhere to go. But her body acted on instinct, sprinting toward the farthest bookshelf, her breath ragged. The room shifted. The bookshelves moved, twisting and warping, the space stretching, changing. The air around her grew thick, pressing against her like invisible hands trying to push her down. She turned a corner and stopped. Another door, but not like the others. This one was new, polished wood, untouched by decay, standing perfectly intact amidst the rotting room. A golden handle gleamed under the flickering light. The whispering rose to a scream. She lunged forward, gripping the handle with both hands. A voice boomed behind her. "Don't open it." Too late. She turned the handle, and the door pulled her inside. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was the faceless thing standing at the desk, watching, waiting. Chapter 8. The Spiral Room. Amelia tumbled forward as the door yanked her inside. She didn't fall onto solid ground. She fell into nothingness, the world around her twisted, her body weightless, spinning through a void so deep and endless it swallowed her screams. Her flashlight slipped from her grasp, vanishing into the abyss below. Darkness engulfed her, pressing against her skin like an unseen force, pulling her down. Then, impact. She crashed onto the floor with a sickening thud, pain exploding through her limbs. The air was knocked from her lungs, and for a terrifying moment, she couldn't breathe. Her body felt bruised, broken, but she was alive. Gasping, Amelia rolled onto her back, her heartbeat hammering against her ribs. She forced herself to sit up, her eyes darting around. Where was she now? This room was different. Unlike the rotting library, unlike the damp tunnel, this place was pristine. The floor beneath her was white marble, cold and smooth. The walls stretched impossibly high, curving into a domed ceiling painted with a mural, one that made Amelia's skin crawl. It depicted children, not normal children. Their faces were hollow, their eyes missing, their hands reaching out, not for each other, but for something unseen. Their bodies were painted in disturbing positions, as if they were falling, or worse, being pulled into the swirling void at the center of the ceiling. And then Amelia noticed something even more horrifying. The children in the mural, some of them looked familiar. Her breath hitched. She had seen them before. The orphanage records, the faded photos, the missing children. She staggered to her feet, her pulse racing. This place wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet, it felt real. A low humming filled the air. Her blood ran cold. The walls began to shift. At first, it was subtle, almost imperceptible, just a small tremor beneath her feet. But then the marble cracked, spiderweb fractures snaking outward. Something was moving beneath her. The humming grew louder, reverberating through the air like a deep, distorted melody. Amelia took a step back, and then she saw it. At the center of the room, embedded into the floor, was a staircase. Not an ordinary staircase, a spiral staircase. It wound downward, disappearing into an abyss of pure blackness, like a gaping mouth waiting to swallow her whole. Her skin prickled with dread. She didn't want to go down there. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to find another way. But there was no other way. The door she had entered through was gone. The walls continued to tremble, the mural shifting, the painted children's expressions changing. Their mouths stretched open, their hollow sockets now facing her. Watching, she had to move. With shaking legs, Amelia stepped toward the staircase. The air grew thicker, heavier, as if the room itself was trying to hold her back. But she pushed forward, gripping the railing with both hands as she descended. The moment her foot touched the first step, the humming stopped. Silence. Amelia's breath was the only sound. She took another step, then another. The deeper she went, the colder it became. Her skin prickled with an unnatural chill, and an invisible weight settled on her shoulders. The walls of the spiral staircase were smooth, black like obsidian, and they seemed to absorb what little light remained. She kept going, down, 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 and then a whisper, "Keep going." Amelia froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. That voice, it was a child's voice, and it was close. She turned her head slowly, her body tense. The darkness at the bottom of the staircase seemed to shift. Something was there. A figure, small. A child. She was standing on the last step, barefoot, her white dress tattered and stained. Her hair hung in long, tangled strands over her face, concealing her features. But Amelia knew. Somehow she knew. This was her, the missing girl, the one the whispers spoke of, the one who had never left. The child tilted her head, and then she moved. Not in a normal way. Her body jerked forward, her limbs twisting unnaturally as if something was pulling her. She lunged. Amelia screamed, stumbling backward, her hands clawing at the railing. But there was nowhere to go. The spiral staircase was endless. The child's face snapped upward, and for the first time, Amelia saw her eyes. They were black, empty, and inside them, something moved. Not reflections, not light. Hands, small, withered hands, reaching out from within her pupils, clawing, stretching toward Amelia. And then the child spoke. "You should not be here." A violent force struck Amelia in the chest. She was thrown backward. The staircase collapsed beneath her. She plunged into the abyss, and everything vanished. Chapter 9. The Hollow Ones. Amelia's scream was lost in the void. She fell, plunging deeper into the darkness, her body weightless, as if the very fabric of reality had abandoned her. The air around her was suffocating, thick with something unseen yet alive, pressing against her skin like unseen hands, pulling her down. Then, impact. Her body slammed into the ground with a bone-rattling force. Pain exploded through her ribs and spine, knocking the breath from her lungs. She lay there for several moments, gasping, her body trembling from the shock. She should have died from that fall, and yet, she was still here. Amelia slowly pushed herself up, her hands trembling as she touched the surface beneath her. Not stone, not wood. It was soft, warm, her stomach twisted. The ground beneath her moved, a sickening shift, like something breathing. She scrambled backward, her fingers digging into the fleshy surface. Not ground, not earth, but something living. The realization sent a cold wave of horror crashing over her. She had landed on something alive. A deep, wet exhale rumbled through the air. And then, a voice. "You've gone too far." Amelia whipped her head around. She wasn't alone. Figures stood in the darkness, dozens of them, their forms barely visible against the void. No, not figures, children. But they were wrong. Their bodies were frail, unnaturally thin, their arms and legs elongated beyond normal proportions. Their faces were featureless, smooth skin stretched over where eyes, noses, and mouths should have been. And yet, they were watching her. She could feel their gaze, though they had no eyes. Her heartbeat hammered against her ribs. The Hollow Ones. That's what they were. She had read about them. Whispers in the orphanage records. The stories of children who were never found, swallowed by something far worse than death. And now, they surrounded her. A low hum filled the air. The Hollow Ones moved, their bodies shifting in an unnatural, jagged way, as if they were glitching in and out of existence. Their arms twisted in impossible angles, their fingers elongating as they reached toward her. Amelia stumbled backward, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She had to run. She turned, but the ground opened beneath her. A black gaping maw tore through the fleshy surface, splitting open like a wound. The air rushed downward, pulling at her limbs with invisible hands. And then she saw it, a figure rising from the abyss. Not a child, not a hollow one, something else. It was tall, its body wrapped in a shroud of darkness, shifting and writhing like a living shadow. Its face was hidden, but its presence was overwhelming, a crushing weight that made Amelia's vision blur and her chest tighten. And then, it spoke, but not in words, in thoughts. A whisper directly into her mind. "You don't belong here." The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't human. It was ancient. A presence that had existed for far too long. Watching, waiting. Amelia's body locked in place, her limbs frozen by an unseen force. She couldn't move. The Hollow Ones dropped to their knees, their featureless faces tilted toward the figure in silent worship. The air trembled, and then the figure moved toward her, slow, deliberate. Amelia screamed, and in that moment, something changed. A flash of memory erupted in her mind. A girl standing at the edge of the orphanage garden, her face blurred, her hands holding something, a key. And then, darkness. The moment shattered. Amelia's body was released, the invisible force lifting. She fell backward, and the ground swallowed her whole. Everything vanished. Chapter 10. The Forsaken Key. Amelia plunged into the darkness, her body weightless as she fell through an abyss with no end. The air around her was thick, pressing against her skin like invisible hands. Her heart pounded wildly, her breath short and ragged. Where was she going? Would she ever land? Then, impact. She crashed onto a hard, uneven surface. This time, the pain wasn't as sharp as before, but her entire body ached as if she had been tossed around like a rag doll. The moment she tried to push herself up, a metallic clink echoed beneath her hand. Something cold, something solid. Amelia's fingers wrapped around it. A key. A rush of memory slammed into her mind like a tidal wave. A girl, standing alone in the orphanage garden. The same girl from before. A rusty key clutched in her small hands. A whisper, barely audible. You must not open it. A feeling of overwhelming dread. Amelia gasped and snapped back to reality. Her eyes darted around. The darkness had receded, revealing where she had landed. It was a corridor, but not like the tunnels beneath the orphanage. This one was different. The walls were lined with doors, hundreds of them, all identical. Plain, wooden doors, stretching into the distance in both directions, vanishing into shadows. The air smelled of mildew and old wood, but beneath it was something else, something rotten. A chill slithered down her spine. She was not alone here. Amelia tightened her grip on the key. What was it for? Why had it appeared in her hand? A soft creak echoed through the corridor. One of the doors moved. Her breath hitched. She turned her head slowly and saw a door near the end of the hall open by itself. A sliver of darkness stretched beyond it, deeper and blacker than anything she had ever seen. It was as if the door led to a place that shouldn't exist. And then she heard it, a whisper, not like the distorted voices from before, not like the Hollow One's silent worship. This was something different, a child's voice, soft, weak. Help me. Amelia's stomach twisted. She knew she shouldn't go in there. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. But the voice, it sounded real. The whisper came again, more urgent this time. Please, don't leave me here. Her fingers trembled around the key. She had to decide. She took a step forward. The corridor seemed to shift around her, the walls stretching, distorting. The other doors began to vanish one by one, until only one remained, the one that was open. Amelia swallowed hard and stepped through. Inside the room. The moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her. Darkness. The air was thick, pressing against her skin like something alive. She fumbled for her flashlight, only to find it was gone. Then, the room lit up, not by light, by shadows, faint, wavering, like the flickering of dying candle flames. They moved along the walls, not cast by anything, but shifting on their own. And in the center of the room, the child, a little girl, standing alone. She was facing away from Amelia, her long dark hair covering her face. Her dress was white, but stained with something dark, something red. A sharp, icy dread settled in Amelia's chest. The girl's shoulders rose and fell with ragged breaths, and then she spoke. You took it, didn't you? Amelia's mouth went dry. Took what? The girl's head twitched. The key. The air around Amelia plummeted in temperature. She shouldn't have come in here. She stepped back, her fingers tightening around the key. I don't know what you mean. The girl's body jerked. Her arms twisted unnaturally, her head tilting at a sharp, impossible angle. Then she turned, and Amelia saw her face. Or rather, what was left of it. Her skin was cracked, as if something had split her open from the inside. Her mouth stretched far too wide, exposing rows of blackened teeth. Her eye sockets were empty, but something inside them moved. Not eyes, hands, small withered hands, reaching, clawing, stretching toward Amelia. Amelia screamed. The girl's body lunged forward. The shadows on the walls burst to life, twisting and writhing like a storm of black tendrils. Amelia ran. She bolted toward the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Behind her, the girl's voice distorted, turning into a guttural, unearthly sound. "Give it back!" Something cold wrapped around Amelia's wrist. A hand. Not the girl's. One of the shadow hands. It pulled. More hands erupted from the darkness, grabbing at her clothes, her arms, her legs. The room was collapsing, the shadows devouring everything. And then, Amelia remembered. The key. With a desperate cry, she plunged it into the door. The second it turned, the world shattered. A deafening roar filled the air, and Amelia was ripped away from the room, from the shadows, from the screaming girl. She fell again. But this time, she knew. She was running out of places to land. Chapter 11. The door that should never be opened. Amelia fell. The moment the key turned, the world around her shattered into a swirling abyss of darkness. She plummeted through nothingness, her body twisting violently in the void. The air was thick with unseen whispers, voices chanting in a language she didn't understand. Then, impact. She crashed onto a hard, cold surface, the breath ripped from her lungs. Pain exploded through her limbs, but there was no time to recover. A deep, unnatural silence surrounded her. Amelia forced herself up, her head pounding, her hands pressed against stone. Cold, damp, ancient. She was no longer in the orphanage. She was somewhere else. The walls around her stretched upward, impossibly high, disappearing into a ceiling hidden in darkness. Flickering torchlight barely illuminated the space, casting eerie shadows that danced along the cracked stone walls. Then she saw it. A door. Massive. Looming. Wrong. It stood at the far end of the chamber, constructed of blackened wood, its surface covered in intricate carvings. Symbols, twisting, unnatural, as if they had been etched by something not human. And at the center of it, a keyhole. Her keyhole. Amelia's blood turned to ice. The whispers returned, hissing through the air. "Do not open it." It was sealed for a reason. The girl, she knew. Memories flashed in her mind. The orphan girl holding the key, warning her. The hollow ones worshipping something unseen. The shadowed figure in the abyss. Everything led to this door, and she was standing before it, holding the key that could open it. She turned around, searching for another way out. There was none. The chamber had no exits, only the door. And then, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from behind her. Amelia turned, her breath caught in her throat. Something was emerging from the shadows. At first it looked human, but as it stepped closer, the truth unfolded. It was not a person. It had the shape of one, a tall, skeletal frame wrapped in a tattered black shroud, but its face was missing. In place of a head, there was nothing but an empty void, a void that moved, shifted, expanded and shrank, as if breathing. The whispers grew louder. The creature raised its hand, impossibly long fingers reaching for her. "You should not be here." Its voice was inside her head, a deep, vibrating presence that sent a wave of nausea through her body. Amelia backed away. Her hand clenched the key so tightly that the jagged edges dug into her palm, drawing blood. The creature stepped closer. "Do not open the door." Its voice twisted, turning into a chorus of overlapping whispers. "You will not survive." Amelia's body shook. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but there was nowhere to go. Her gaze snapped back to the door. Was this what the Hollow Ones were protecting? What the girl was warning her about? She had two choices. Leave the door sealed and face the creature, or open it. But if she did, what would come out? The creature took another step forward. Choose. Amelia's mind raced. She didn't want to open it. She shouldn't. And yet, something deep inside her whispered otherwise, a truth she had been avoiding. She had already opened it once before. Not here, not now. But as a child, the memories came rushing back. The orphanage, a hidden door beneath the floorboards, her small hands clutching the same key. The whispers had warned her not to open it, but she had. And something had come through, something that had been waiting ever since. She was never meant to remember, never meant to return. And yet, here she was. The whispers turned into screams. The creature lunged. Amelia made her choice. She plunged the key into the lock. The moment it turned, the chamber shook. The torches snuffed out, and the door opened. A black void stretched beyond it, and from within, something moved. Something that should never have been set free. Chapter 12. What should have stayed forgotten. The door opened. The air rushed out of the chamber, as if something beyond the threshold had been waiting to breathe. The darkness within was deeper than anything Amelia had ever seen. Not just the absence of light, but something alive. The creature behind her froze. For the first time, it did not step forward. It did not reach for her. It stared into the abyss she had just unlocked. And then, in a voice that was no longer human, it whispered, "You have made a mistake." The moment the words left its mouth, the darkness inside the door moved. It wasn't empty. Something was coming. A sound. A deep, guttural noise that rumbled from within, like the growl of something massive, something ancient. The torches in the chamber flickered wildly, their flames stretching toward the black void as if being pulled. Amelia stepped back, her body screaming for her to run. But there was nowhere left to go. The creature behind her collapsed, its shrouded form shriveling, folding into itself like a dying flame. It had spent centuries standing here, warning, waiting, and now its purpose was gone. The air turned heavy, pressing down on Amelia's chest, making it hard to breathe. The walls of the chamber cracked, stone grinding against stone, dust falling from above. The thing inside the door took its first step forward. A shape began to emerge, not fully visible, not fully formed. It was huge, larger than anything that should fit within the chamber. A shifting, writhing mass of shadows, long skeletal fingers clawing at the air. Its body was an endless void, moving like smoke, but something within it glowed. Eyes, not 2, not 10, hundreds, thousands. They blinked in unison, locking onto Amelia as if seeing her for the first time. A single thought screamed in her mind. This is what the Hollow Ones were protecting. They weren't worshipping it. They were keeping it contained. And she had set it free. A deep, inhuman voice rumbled from the entity, vibrating through her bones. It has been so long. Its words weren't spoken. They were felt, carved into the space around her, warping reality itself. The torches died, leaving nothing but red embers floating in the air like dying stars. The thing shifted, stepping closer. Amelia couldn't move. Her body was frozen, her mind trapped in an endless spiral of fear. You were the one who opened the door before. The memories slammed into her, flashes of the past. A child, small hands gripping a key, a secret door beneath the orphanage, a whispering darkness, something unseen reaching for her. She had run, she had forgotten, but the door had remained ajar. Now, after all these years, she had returned, and it had followed. The thing moved again, its countless eyes watching her. Do you remember why you locked it away? A single horrible memory surfaced. Not of her locking the door, of someone else. The orphan girl. The one who had warned her. The one who had died. She had given Amelia the key, told her to run, told her to never come back. And Amelia had forgotten her, forgotten all of it. Until now. A new feeling rose inside her, one stronger than fear. Guilt. The creature smiled. Or at least, it felt like a smile, though its form had no mouth. You cannot run from what you did. The shadows surged forward. Amelia screamed as they wrapped around her, pulling her in. The chamber collapsed, stone and dust swallowed by the void. She was falling again, but this time, it wasn't through empty space. She was falling backward in time, back to the night she first opened the door. The beginning again. She landed with a thud. The impact was softer this time. Wooden planks beneath her, the scent of old dust filling her lungs. She looked up. She was in the orphanage, but not as an adult, as a child. Her small hands trembled, gripping the same key, the same one she had just used.